section. Atop his blasphemy, he denies destiny. It's obvious for you, destiny, yani, denying destiny is blasphemy. So here's a statement. Atop his blasphemy, he denies destiny. That means he put blasphemy on top of his blasphemy. So this section is about groups or individuals who merged deviant beliefs, more than one sick belief. Previously in the section that we're reading, we were talking about broad beliefs that encompass more than one group. Now we're talking about groups who took more than one deviant belief. When the people were aware of what Wasil ibn Atta said about destiny, and they had already been deeming him a blasphemer for what he innovated about the major sinners, they said about him what became a proverb for anyone who merged two crooked matters. They said about him, atop his blasphemy, he denies destiny. So that's a proverb. Wasil ibn Atta, that's the Sheikh of the Mu'tazila. You remember that because you've been studying. Barakallahu fikum. The tainted Murji'ah. So if you recall, when we talked about the groups in general, we said there are 5 groups of Murji'ah, not counting the Murji'ah who added something to their irja'. Irja' being believing that every believer is exonerated from punishment. That's a kufr belief in itself, and some of the Murji'ah added on top of that another deviance. Amongst those who put two bad things together are those who merge denying every believer's punishment with denying destiny. So those are Murji'ah who are Qadariyah at the same time, like Abu Shimr, Muhammad ibn Shabib al-Bisri, and the Khalidiyah. So those are Murji'ah who are Qadariyah, and as we're going to say later in the book, their blasphemy is so extreme because the Prophet ﷺ deemed both of those cases blasphemy in one hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, he said, alayhi salatu wassalam, Sinfani min ummati laysa lahuma nasibun fil Islam, al-Qadariyatu wal-Murji'ah. 2 groups from my nation do not have a share in Islam. The Qadariyah, destiny deniers, and the Murji'ah, those who exonerate every believer from punishment. So these Murji'ah who are Qadariyah, they have blasphemed from 2 sides that the Prophet ﷺ himself explicitly deemed kufr. So that's a heavy blasphemy. Others merge denying punishment for the believers with what Jahm ibn Safwan said, that the slaves have no will. So those Murji'ah are Jahmiyah. So then another group of exonerators, those who exonerate every believer from punishment, they added to their irja' the belief of denying agency for the slaves. And they believed that the slaves have no will and no choice to do anything. And that's the belief of the Jahmiyah. So those Murji'ah are Jahmiyah. So the Murji'ah have become, by this detailing, 7 factions. Let me know if you have any questions there. Atheistic pagans. That's really self-contradictory. That shows you how backwards these people are that we're going to talk about. Because an atheist denies the existence of God altogether. And a pagan, not only does he confirm the existence of God, but he gives partners to God. So how could someone in the world be an atheistic pagan? Some have simultaneously compared God while denying his existence. For example, denying destiny is the atheist way, since the lack of God would be the lack of an eternal manager who determined everything. So that's atheism, denying destiny. Ironically, it results in confirming many creators besides God. That's making partners for God. And that is likening creations to God. That's paganism. And like Jahm, he said that God's knowledge is eventual, meaning that he would come to know something after not knowing it, and that he does not know a thing until it occurs. And that is likening. That's comparing God to the creations. That's paganism. On the other hand, he inaccurately used to say that Allah is not described with any description that can be applied to the slaves. From there, he claimed that it is not valid to say that Allah is alive or knowledgeable or willing or even existent, because these attributes are used for the creations. That is atheism. In word, that's atheism. As if he doesn't know, though, what he's saying. Let's unpack that. So, on the other hand, he inaccurately used to say that Allah is not described with any description that can be applied to the slaves. What does that mean? Yani, why did we say it this way? He inaccurately used to say that. Don't we say that Allah cannot be ascribed with any attribute of the slaves? Yes, we do. So how is he being inaccurate by saying that? By saying that Allah is not described with any attribute, with any description that can be applied to the slaves, because he means something here that's wrong. So first, you need to understand the difference between comparing things and a word having more than one meaning. Just because you used one word for two different things doesn't mean that you compared those two things. Because it's possible that you would use a word for one thing and you mean something, but then you use the same word for another thing and you mean something else. So you're using the same word without giving the same meaning. This is where his inaccuracy, this is the source of his inaccuracy. We say it's true that Allah has not described with any description that can be applied to the slaves. That means in meaning. In meaning. We don't say, though, that any word that you could ever use for a creation, you could never use that word for Allah. How come you could sometimes use words that work for the creation for Allah? Because it's valid that words have more than one meaning. It's valid that a single word has more than one meaning. And also add to that here, very, very, very important point that you need to keep close, which is, for us, the meaning of comparing things, or let me say, the meaning of two things being similar, as we already said in the beginning of the book. The meaning of two things being similar is that one can replace the other. One can substitute the other. Even if they're not similar in every way, as long as one thing can substitute another in some way, then in that way, they are similar, even if they're different in other ways. So number one, using one word for two different things is not comparing those two things when that word has two different meanings in both instances. And number two, likeness between things, according to us, is when one of those can replace the other. So if these matters are clear, then the inaccuracy of what Jahm ibn Safwan is saying becomes clear. He used to inaccurately say that Allah is not described with any description that can be applied to the slaves, as if he wants to say Allah is not like the creations. But he went wrong in the way where he's saying, therefore, any word that you could use for a creation, you can't use it for Allah. That's a blunder. From there, he claimed that it is not valid to say that Allah is alive, or knowledgeable, or willing, or even, existent. That's atheism. Because these attributes, he says, these attributes are used for the creations. That's atheism. But one might say, but is he really denying the existence of God? We already clarified that we are accusing some people of atheism even if they don't explicitly deny the existence of God because of their implications. Just like we also accuse some people of being pagans, although they don't explicitly say God is like the creation, and they don't explicitly say God has a partner. And in fact, they would verbally deny that and say God is not like the creation and God does not have a partner. But because of what they believe in reality, we say, despite your words, you're a pagan. And for these ones, we say, these words of yours, these are words of atheism. So if you don't know what you're saying, you should stop saying that. Jahm ibn Safwan said that it is merely said that Allah is powerful, because according to him, the slaves don't have any power. According to him, he's the one who said, no one has a choice. No creation has a choice or a will. He said willing. Murid. Willing. Interesting. We'll have to check that there. Jahm ibn Safwan says, we creatures have no will, actually. But the word willing is here. So we'll have to check that. So, according to what's presented here, he claimed that it is not valid to say that Allah is alive or knowledgeable. Okay, that's clear from his perspective. Or even existent. But he said it is valid to say Allah is powerful. Why? Because according to him, slaves don't have any power. And it is valid according to him to say Allah is creator and Allah is doer. According to him, no one does anything, only Allah. So I don't know how did will get mixed here. Put in there. Let's take a look in Al-Farqu Bayn Al-Firaq and see if it's there. Because according to his belief, that should be here. That Allah is willing. Because according to him, no one else has a will. And according to him, you can say Allah is Muhyi, life creator, and Mumid, death creator. Because these descriptions cannot be true of the slaves. Zurara ibn Ayun, he's a Shiite. He used to say that Allah was not knowledgeable nor powerful. Then he created knowledge, life, power, will, hearing, and sight for himself. So, saying Allah is not knowledgeable or powerful, that's atheism right there. And then saying that he created knowledge, life, power, will, hearing, and sight for himself means he has created attributes. So that means he's like a creation. Then some Qadariyah from Basra took their example and said, the speech and will of Allah are created. Then the Karramiyya went further, adding that God has recurring wills and realizations. Yani, the Karramiyya said Allah wills from time to time, and He sees from time to time, and He hears and speaks from time to time, like that. And some God comparers are unwitting atheists, those who say that existence without a place is impossible. So you might meet a Wahhabi. He says, you're saying Allah doesn't exist because you're saying He exists without a place. So what's he doing? Because in reality, Allah exists without a place. So really, he's committing atheism, and he doesn't even know it. He committed atheism by way of likening God to the creation. So some of them are unwitting atheists.